After getting together with Austen Howard, I heard his twin brother say, "Austen, let me pretend to be you and have some fun with Lexi." Austen indifferently responded, "Sure." I pretended not to know and dated the fake Austen. But when Austen saw the bite marks on my neck, he went crazy. He grabbed his brother's neck and demanded, "Who allowed you to touch her?" Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Late at night, just after I had finished my shower, Austen's message came through. It was the address of a high-end private club. I gripped my phone tightly, and perhaps because I didn't reply immediately, Austen sent another message. "Don't make me wait too long, Lexi." I sighed and replied, "I'll be there soon." I quickly got dressed, and as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom, I saw my stepfather standing outside the door. His cloudy eyes were filled with nauseating desire. "Why are you dressed so tightly after a shower? Are you going out?" My stepfather approached me, smoking a cigarette. I stepped back 2 paces to keep my distance. "Austen is looking for me." Hearing those 3 words, my stepfather hesitated in fear and stopped. I took advantage of this moment to quickly pass him and open the door. "You shameless thing, do you think that having Austen Howard as your protector means I won't dare to touch you? How dare you use him to threaten me?" My stepfather spat harshly behind me. I glanced back at him coldly and said, "Do you dare?" Then I forcefully shut the door. The sound of the door closing and my stepfather's curses reached my ears simultaneously. The club was luxuriously decorated, and the guests were all dressed in expensive clothes. In my hoodie, I felt out of place. As soon as the waiter led me to the top-floor private room, I heard voices inside. "Austen, I heard Lexi White treats you really well. Let me pretend to be you and have fun with her." As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of laughter erupted. "No way, Cleve, you're openly stealing your brother's girl. You don't understand, that Lexi is so pure. She makes soup for Austen, coaxes him to take his medicine. Who can resist that kind of gentleness? Would Austen really allow it? Of course, Austen and Cleve have such a good relationship, it's not like they haven't done this before." After they had enough of their teasing, Austen's deep voice finally sounded. "All right, consider it a welcome-back gift for you." His voice carried a nonchalant laugh. The laughter grew louder. The waiter stood awkwardly, looking at me. As the person involved, I felt nothing. I smiled at the waiter and pushed open the door to the private room. Initially, I approached Austen just to seek the Howard family's protection, so that I wouldn't be bullied at school and wouldn't be coveted by my stepfather at home. When a person's safety hangs by a thread, all she wants is to escape. The identity of the lifeline she clings to doesn't matter. In the end, the rope will be discarded anyway. The young men in the private room whistled when they saw me. They were extremely flirtatious and arrogant. I wore a gentle smile as I walked toward the middle of the sofa. Austen and Cleve sat together, looking at me with ambiguous expressions. Like beasts waiting for their prey to enter the cage. The 2 of them had identical faces. The same pale skin, the same extreme handsomeness. "Lexi, you're here." A hand reached out to me, pulling me to his side. I looked at that face and sneered inwardly. Although Cleve and Austen looked alike, their auras were completely different upon closer inspection. Austen was gloomy and oppressive. Cleve was rebellious and unruly. But to me, it didn't matter. I didn't care if he was Austen or Cleve. As long as he could keep me safe until I finished my exams and left that rotten home, it was fine. I naturally took Cleve's hand, as if I really mistook him for Austen. Cleve was very satisfied with my actions. After intertwining our fingers, he pointed to the person beside him. "This is my brother, Cleve Howard." I saw Austen frown at this title but quickly returned to normal, nodding at me as if it was the first time he had seen me. I politely greeted him and then looked at Cleve with deep affection. "Austen, I bought you some hangover medicine on the way here. Would you like to take one?" I had said this to Austen many times before. Every time he drank, I would prepare hangover medicine. After taking him home, I would make him a bowl of stomach-warming soup. Cleve looked at the medicine in my hand, raised his eyebrows slightly, and smiled. "All right, then feed me." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Austen holding a cigarette but not smoking, lost in thought. I brought the medicine to Cleve's mouth and fed it to him. After a few rounds of drinks, someone suggested playing a game. Whoever draws the 3 of clubs and the 6 of clubs has to kiss for 30 seconds. One of the guys, waving the Joker card, gave the orders. Cleve and I revealed our cards at the same time. Wow, looks like a couple drew the cards. The guy, a friend of the Howard brothers, knew about this boyfriend swapping game and was trying to smooth things over. Cleve grabbed my chin and was about to kiss me. A dull thud sounded beside us. The coffee table in front of Austen was suddenly kicked away, and he stood up, looking down at us. Tired of drinking, let's call it a night. Cleve paused just before kissing me, his eyes turning cold. After a while, he let go of me and helped me up. Right, Cleve, I forgot you just got back today. Let's end it here. Cleve looked at the stern-faced Austen and continued to play along. Before leaving, I gently pulled up Cleve's open jacket. It's windy and cold outside. You just recovered from a fever, don't catch a cold. As I said this, Austen was standing behind his brother, staring intently at me. A few days ago, he had a fever, and it was I who went to his house to take care of him, coaxing him to take medicine, making soup and porridge for him. Lexi, let's go home. Cleve hesitated for a few seconds, then gently held me in his arms. As I left with Cleve, the always silent Austen spoke up, Lexi White. I stopped and turned to look at him as if looking at a stranger. Austen frowned, his voice deepening. Who do you love? I lowered my eyes to hide the fleeting sarcasm, then looked up at Cleve holding me. It's Austen. The one I love is Austen Howard. Cleve's expression gradually turned cold at my words. Yet he still had to keep up the act. Austen thought I loved him deeply. Everyone around him thought I loved him deeply. But they didn't know this was a carefully orchestrated scam just for Austen Howard. For survival, to climb out of that rotten, sewer-like home. If illness hadn't taken my father away, I would have grown up as a girl surrounded by wealth and love. Although I lost my mother when I was very young, my stepmother was always good to me. She would make sweet cookies for me, tell me stories, and cover for me when I was lazy and got scolded by my father. I thought I would grow up happily like this. But on my 12th birthday, my father collapsed at home and was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. After a year of treatment, he still passed away. I remember that day in the hospital, my father held my hand and wiped away my tears. It's all Dad's fault for not letting you have a 12th birthday cake. This year on your 13th birthday, Dad won't be able to be with you. You won't be mad at Dad, right? I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, only able to shake my head and sob. I didn't want a birthday cake, I just wanted my dad. If I could, I would exchange all my future birthday cakes for my dad's health and safety. But the gods didn't hear my prayers, and the clock of life still struck its final chime. At that moment, the last thing he said to me was, "Live well, Lexi." It seemed like a dark cloud had settled over my life from that moment on. My stepmother used the remaining inheritance to try to start a business but was swindled out of it all. I became the biggest burden. My grandfather, who favored boys over girls, didn't want me. My maternal grandparents had long passed away. The only person I could call family was the stepmother who no longer loved me. What are you looking at? I won't support you. Blame it on your father for dying young. My stepmother scolded me while pushing me away, then got into a taxi without looking back. Ignoring my scraped knees, I got up and chased after her, crying, "Mom, please don't leave me. I'll be good, and I won't eat much." I don't know how long I chased, but the car eventually stopped. I saw my stepmother's eyes were red, filled with both hatred and helplessness. And so, I started living with my stepmother, depending on each other. Later, she remarried. The man she married was 10 years older than her. This marriage became my hell. On the first night we moved in, the door to my locked room was opened by that man with a key. When I ran out to tell my stepmother, I received a slap. "Stop spreading lies. He was just worried you'd kick off the blanket and catch a cold. If you dare ruin my marriage, get out." After that, I would always push a table against the door each time I went back to my room. Then, late at night, I would stand by my bed, holding scissors, staring at the door being pushed open. 1 push, 2 pushes, 3 pushes. Waiting for the person outside to give up, waiting for the noise to gradually diminish. At that time, school became my only refuge. No disgusting stepfather, no cold and indifferent stepmother. But this refuge turned into a purgatory after an exam. I had just been happy about getting first place. In the next second, I was dragged into the bathroom and doused with a bucket of cold water. I was held down, unable to resist. The mastermind was a pretty student. I remember her name was Nancy Ford. Lexi White, because of you, I got second place this time. Do you know how many beatings I got at home? Nancy pinched my chin, looking at me like I was a rat. As the slaps landed, the counting voice of the person next to her was like a countdown to execution. Long and torturous. When I told the teacher about it, all I got was, "Nancy is an excellent student. She wouldn't do such a thing. You two should understand and forgive each other." At that moment, I realized it wasn't that Nancy Ford wouldn't do it, but that the Ford family was powerful and wealthy, and teachers didn't dare to intervene. As I left the office, I saw a young man being surrounded by others. Judging by everyone's reactions, it seemed like everyone was afraid of him. When I went home in my wet clothes, I saw the man who was supposed to go on a trip with my stepmother. His gaze slid over me like a snake's tongue. It made my skin crawl. "Lexi, what happened to you?" The man pulled a wicked smile, looking me up and down. "Don't call me that," I growled, searching for my stepmother. "What are you looking for?" "That woman isn't home, she went on the trip." I told her there was a problem with the business at home and that I'd join her later. The man got up and walked towards me step by step. I fumbled in my backpack for the new utility knife I had bought. "Lexi, you're getting prettier and prettier." The man's eyes grew darker. As if he couldn't hold back anymore, he lunged at me. I slashed with the knife, blood gushing from his forearm. "You little witch!" The man screamed in pain. "If you touch me again, I'll kill you." I don't care about risking my life. I put the knife back in my backpack and ran out. I lied to the man, I do care about my life. Because I promised my dad I would live well. Suddenly, I thought of the young man I brushed past earlier in the day. I seemed to hear them call him Austen Howard. A thought began to sprout in my mind. I started secretly observing Austen Howard, collecting all kinds of information about him. I waited outside the bar where Austen often went for a few days, and finally saw him drunk. He was sitting on a chair outside, smoking a cigarette and lost in thought. I adjusted my school badge to make sure my name was visible at a glance. Then I bought a piece of hangover candy and approached him. "You look like you're having a hard time. This is hangover candy. Want to try one?" Austen lifted his head, his dark eyes deep and unreadable. Seeing that he didn't respond, I smiled and took his hand, placing the candy in his palm. "Don't worry, it's sweet." He looked me up and down, took a drag on his cigarette. "You're wearing a school uniform to a bar?" My ears turned red, and I said softly, "No, I came because I was worried about you." Austen leaned back and sneered, "You're stalking me?" I pretended to be embarrassed and nodded, "Sorry, I was just afraid you'd feel awful after getting drunk." His smile was ambiguous. "You like me?" I bit my lip and nodded again, "Yes, I like you. I'll be good to you." Austen paused his smoking hand, got up and walked closer to me, lifting my school badge with his fingertips. "Class 3, Lexi White. I'll give you a chance," he said nonchalantly. Before I could react, he kissed me. When I was almost out of breath, Austen let me go. "Next time, remember to breathe. You should go back now, don't come here again." With that, he turned and went back into the bar. The shyness and joy on my face gradually disappeared. I wiped my mouth. Then I smiled again, a satisfied smile. The plan was successful. When Nancy surrounded me with people again, Austen appeared. The door of the abandoned storage room was kicked open. Austen stood behind the bodyguards, his expression extremely cold. It was the first time I saw Nancy so out of control and embarrassed, kneeling on the ground and being slapped repeatedly. "Nancy Ford, you have to consider the owner when hitting a dog. Austen held me, looking down at Nancy condescendingly. Yes, hitting a dog. Austen had always seen me as a pet that would listen and be good to him. When he sent me home, we happened to run into my stepfather, who was returning from the hospital after changing his bandages. Seeing me get out of the luxury car, he grabbed my hair. Shameless slut, pretending to be so virtuous in front of me, I thought you were something special. Today I'll. Before he could finish his sentence, a bodyguard grabbed his wrist. My stepfather let go of my hair in pain, and the next second he was kicked to the ground. He was beaten so badly that he kept howling in pain. He ended up in the hospital for a month. I calculated the time for the exams. I did my best to act like I loved Austen, did my best to be good to him. During this time, I ignored Austen's flirts and intimacy with others. I didn't want his love anyway. Gradually, I became the person who stayed with Austen the longest. There were even rumors that Austen had genuine feelings for me. Until today. They realized that Austen had no real feelings at all. In his eyes, I was still just a pet he could give away at any time. But I didn't care. Because soon, I could leave all of them behind. Lexi, you've been distracted this whole way. Cleve's voice suddenly sounded. It pulled my thoughts back. I looked at the high-end apartment in front of me, feigning confusion. Austen, did you move? Cleve seemed quite displeased with this address, and his grip on my hand tightened a bit. Yes, I have many houses. As soon as we entered, Cleve pressed me onto the sofa. Lexi, what were you thinking about just now? I obediently replied, thinking about what kind of warm soup to make for you today. Cleve's dark eyes softened a bit. Lexi, you're so good. He pulled my hand over and kissed the inside of my wrist. Lexi, who am I? His voice was a bit hoarse. Austen, you are Austen. Ah. Why did you bite me? I suppressed the mockery in my heart and pretended to be in pain. Cleve's fingers rubbed the bite mark he left on my wrist and continued to ask, Lexi, who am I? I bit my lip and said softly, you are Austen. Ah, why did you bite me again? This time, Cleve bit my neck, like a beast hunting its prey. Ding dong. The incessant doorbell rang with an urgent insistence. Cleve gritted his teeth, got up, and went to open the door. Why are you here? Austen silently walked past Cleve and came straight to me. The game is over. Austen stopped in front of me, looking at Cleve with a cold voice. This is no fun anymore. Cleve smiled mischievously. Austen didn't bother with words, pulling me up from the sofa. The bite mark on my neck was exposed to his eyes. Austen paused, his eyes darkening, like the calm before a storm. Eerie, sinister. Before I could react, there was a loud bang against the wall. Cleve was slammed against the wall by Austen, who was gripping his neck. Have you forgotten all the rules after being abroad for a few years? Who allowed you to touch her? An out-of-control, fiercely angry Austen. It was a side of Austen I had never seen before. Cleve seemed a bit surprised too, and after a few seconds of stunned silence, he wickedly curled his lips. Brother, why so excited? Weren't you the one who sent her to me? Don't play the good guy now. Austen's arm muscles bulged with veins, and after a few seconds, he silently let go of Cleve. Cleve touched the red mark on his neck and waved at me. Hello, Lexi, let's reintroduce ourselves, I'm Cleve Howard. He wasn't flustered from being exposed, nor was he awkward as a deceiver. He just smiled calmly, indifferently. Austen stepped forward, blocking my view, his eyes dark as he looked at me. I couldn't read the emotions in his eyes. But I instantly knew the emotion I needed to portray. I looked up at Austen, tears uncontrollably falling, but my words weren't accusatory. Instead, I softly asked him, Is it something I did wrong? Do you not want me anymore? Austen's back seemed to stiffen for a moment, and I saw his Adam's apple move. Then, I was pulled into a warm embrace. I'll take you home. Austen's voice was very low, very gentle. But I was relieved inside, thinking this ordeal might be over. Looking over Austen's shoulder, I saw Cleve's smile gradually freeze, his dark eyes deep and unreadable. As Austen led me out, he glanced at Cleve still standing there. I already said, the game is over. Don't come near her again. Cleve resumed his rebellious demeanor, pouting, I can't promise that. Austen's lips curled with disdain, you can try. Cleve leaned against the table with his hands in his pockets, smiling innocently. Austen, don't be so fierce. We've played like this before, and you never cared. Shut your mouth. Austen's voice carried a warning. Cleve raised his hands in a surrender gesture, still smiling. Okay, I won't say any more. If the game's over, it's over. It's no fun once it's exposed anyway. Then he snapped his fingers at me. Lexi, remember, I'm Cleve Howard. Don't get it wrong next time we meet. Austen, out of patience, didn't want to waste more words on his crazy brother and led me into the elevator. As soon as we got out of the elevator, the driver pulled the car up in front of us. The moment we got in, Austen raised the partition, isolating the back seat. A wave of unease surged in my heart. When Austen reached out his hand towards me, I instinctively grabbed it hard, looking at him coldly. My gaze revealed an undisguised aversion to Austen's touch. It was a self-protective instinct developed from being in dangerous environments for a long time. I realized in silence that my disguise had failed. Just as I was thinking of a reasonable explanation, Austen spoke. What, afraid I'll hit you? Have I ever hit you? He wasn't angry, nor did he question me, just wore a helpless smile. I was stunned for a few seconds, then shook my head and let go of his hand. Austen pulled me closer, holding my face to expose my neck. Let me see if you bit through the skin, do you need a rabies shot? Hearing him call his brother a dog, I couldn't help but chuckle softly. Noticing Austen's hand paused. I looked up to see his gaze shifting from my neck to my face, quietly watching. I blinked my eyelashes, showing confusion. A few seconds later, I heard Austen sigh lightly, his fingers touching my hair. Lexi, this kind of thing won't happen again. I pretended to be obedient, rubbing my cheek against Austen's palm. After what just happened, I still decided to use Austen as my lifeline. Cleve's madness would cause too much trouble if used as a lifeline. The day after Austen sent me home, he had someone send over a diamond necklace, then didn't contact me again. I knew this was his compensation for that incident. Every time I caught him being intimate with other girls before, he would also give expensive gifts. Like giving a pet some treats, simple charity to appease. I hid those jewelry pieces well, planning to sell them all before leaving, converting them into enough money. Thinking about this, I handed my completed transfer application form to the office. Lexi, the college entrance exams are next semester. Are you sure you want to transfer after this term? The class teacher frowned, asking earnestly. I nodded. My uncle should have mentioned the transfer to you, the school there is good too. They've reviewed my previous exam and competition results, and agreed to let me transfer exceptionally. My uncle also believes that as my only remaining relative, he can take better care of me being nearby. You know, my stepmother and the others don't care about me. The class teacher didn't say much more. After all, my parents never attended any parent-teacher meetings. My stepmother and stepfather's phone numbers were always unreachable. After leaving the office, I went to the bathroom, took out my silenced phone, and called back the missed call. After a short ring, a scheming male voice came through. Hello, Lexi, I have arranged the transfer for you. Shouldn't you transfer the money to me now? I held the phone, a cold smile appearing on my face. This man used to curry favor with my dad in every way. After my dad had an accident, he immediately distanced himself. When I had nowhere to go, he coldly watched and told me to get lost. You don't plan to default, do you? Lexi White, you know how many connections I had to pull to get this done for you. If Bruce here wasn't urgently needing money, I wouldn't bother with your nonsense. The man kept rambling. Bruce, my uncle's useless son, had to pay compensation for hitting a classmate. If you don't bother with my business, then your son is doomed. Don't show off to me here, I'll transfer the final payment when I feel like it. I sneered, then hung up the phone, cutting off the man's curses along with it. Sunlight poured into the quiet bathroom through the window. Dust particles danced in the light, seemingly chasing the light. Just like people running forward, trying to escape. As the school bell rang, I finished the last question. After packing up and just stepping out of the classroom, I saw the cocky man standing outside the door. I recognized him. It was him who whistled in the booth that day. Just as I was about to ignore him and walk forward, he blocked my path. Lexi, why are you pretending not to recognize me? I came here specifically to find you. The young man smiled frivolously. What's up? I looked at him expressionlessly. His eyes lingered on my face, and then he said, Do you know Austen is getting engaged? Engaged? Austen didn't tell me. No wonder he hasn't contacted me these days. That's good, I was planning on how to leave anyway. Now I don't have to think about it. Heartbroken? It's okay, if Austen doesn't want you, I can take you. I can give you whatever Austen gave you. He reached out to the strands of hair falling by my ear. I coldly slapped his hand away and sneered, Sorry, I'm not so desperate to eat anything. Your dish is too disgusting, I can't stomach it. Slap. A loud slap abruptly cut off my words. The burning pain quickly spread across my cheek. What do you think you are, to talk to me with that attitude? You're just a stray dog thrown away by Austen. I'm being merciful by wanting you. Even if I forcibly take you away today, who would care? His expression became more and more arrogant as he approached me step by step. Just as I was fumbling for the utility knife in my backpack, a sinister low voice suddenly sounded. Who are you planning to take away by force, Hubert? Hubert's body stiffened instantly, and when he saw the face of the person coming, his expression changed. Oh. Austen? Cleve's smile deepened as he stood beside me with a playful look in his eyes. Scared stiff? Take a good look at who I am. Hubert swallowed, squinting his eyes. Cleve? Cleve clapped his hands in satisfaction. Congratulations, correct answer. Let me think about what reward to give you. Hubert retreated pale-faced. No need. Ah. His unfinished words turned into a shrill scream. Cleve, at some point, had pulled out the utility knife from my backpack. Quickly and accurately kicked Hubert down and stabbed the knife into the hand that had just slapped me. The blade pierced through the back of his hand, splitting the flesh. Cleve twisted the knife 2 more times, stood up slowly amidst Hubert's increasingly horrific screams, and pressed his expensive shoe onto Hubert's face. Now, who is the stray dog? Hubert's face was distorted from the pressure, and he begged for mercy intermittently. Cleve turned his neck to look at me, then bent down and smiled at Hubert. Let you go? Sure, bark like a dog for her, and I'll let you go. Cleve raised his eyebrows at me and applied more pressure with his foot. Hubert looked at me for a long time before weakly opening his mouth. Woof, woof. I took in Hubert's miserable state without feeling much pleasure. Instead, a wave of fatigue surged over me. Hubert's appearance today, the things he said, wasn't it all caused by me? Wasn't it me who bowed my head, willingly putting that invisible collar of lost dignity around my neck and handing that chain to Austen? If Hubert was the villain humiliating me, then I was the true culprit slaughtering myself. It was I who presented this knife to everyone around Austen. The afterglow dyed the empty corridor in a rosy color, falling on me, making me feel like it was divine punishment. If Dad saw this, he would surely be very disappointed too. What's wrong? Scared? Cleve squeezed my hand. I looked at him with a blank stare. Feeling Cleve's warm fingers brushing the corner of my eye, I heard his somewhat ambiguous voice. Why are you crying? Was I crying? When did I start crying? I blinked my eyes. Hubert had already been carried away, and Cleve's bodyguards were wiping the blood off the floor. Suppressing my emotions, I stepped back to avoid Cleve's hand. What are you doing here? He stared at his empty hand for a while before looking at me. Wow, you're so heartless. I just helped you, and you're treating me so coldly? I pressed my lips together, my eyes showing vigilance. Cleve put one hand in his pocket, resuming his usual nonchalant demeanor. I came to see you, what else could I do? I've been locked up by my brother, and he even sent people to watch me. I finally managed to escape today, but in a few days, he'll send me abroad again. Isn't it reasonable for me to see my beloved before I leave? He spoke teasingly, his eyes playful. I frowned at his teasing, silently trying to bypass him. Cleve grabbed my hand, his expression darkening. Lexi, I'm thinking about taking you with me or finding a place to lock you up. Aren't you in love with my brother? We look the same, maybe if you spend enough time with me, you'll fall for me too. He laughed lowly. Or maybe in the end, you'll treat me like my brother, taking care of me the way you take care of him. Lexi, I like the way you look at me when you mistake me for my brother, not this cold look you have now. Lunatic! I cursed in my heart. A bad feeling surged up inside me. Cleve was crazier than I thought, and he would definitely do what he said. Just as I was thinking about how to escape, Cleve's tone changed again, seemingly sighing and helpless, as light as a whisper. But why were you crying just now? Why did you cry so pitifully? His constant changes left me a bit confused. Just as I was pondering the meaning of his words, he gently ruffled my hair. Let's go, I'll take you home. He looked at my hair, now a mess, and laughed as he turned around. In the car on the way back, Cleve was unusually silent. Just as I was relieved that I didn't have to deal with his words, he spoke. Lexi, stop thinking about Austen. There's no chance for you two. This arranged marriage was decided by Grandpa, and no one can defy his orders. His eyes darkened, as if his thoughts had drifted far away. His son and daughter-in-law were forced together by him in the same way. They both had people they loved and resisted, but in the end, they were forced to become a resentful couple, resulting in one going mad and the other dying. The woman jumped off a building due to postpartum depression, staining the whole courtyard with blood, and the man went mad after seeing it. Leaving behind a pair of twin brothers, growing up in that cold old house, rotting day by day. Even if Austen wants to resist, Grandpa has 1,000 ways to make him obey. What will his fate be? His lips curved into a sarcastic and bitter smile. This was the first time I heard about the Howard family's past. It was also the first time I learned about the story of Austen and Cleve's parents. It was like someone lifted the luxurious velvet curtain, revealing a corner of the rotten, foul stench. Just as I was thinking about what to say, a sudden break jolted me back to reality. The car was forced to stop. He really came quickly. Cleve resumed his usual rebellious demeanor, resting his hand behind his head, watching the person get out of the car in front. Austen was wearing a black suit, as if he had just come from a banquet. Proper and noble. If you ignored the murderous look on his face. The car door was opened, and Austen's cold hand pulled me out, his gaze falling on Cleve inside the car. I told you to stay away from her. Cleve nonchalantly patted the non-existent dust off his body. You came so quickly. Your dinner with Miss Jo isn't over yet, right? Are you that afraid I'll take Lexi away and lock her up? You're my brother, after all. You understand me. But, did you think about the consequences of disrupting Grandpa's arranged dinner? Austen didn't get angry, instead, he smiled with a strong sense of pressure. Have you had enough of your freedom? Do you want to go back to the Howard family and be tied up like a dog? Cleve's pupils tightened, his face looking grim. Austen placed his hand on the car door, looking down at his brother like a king. If you don't want to go back and be tied up, then remember what I said. Stay far away, or I won't mind letting you experience it too. With that, Austen straightened up and slammed the car door shut. The driver drove away almost instantly. Austen looked at the palm prints still lingering on my face and his breath deepened. Are you feeling wronged? Feeling wronged? That one question left me somewhat stunned. It seemed like a long time since I last heard those words. I felt a lump in my throat, and after a while, I softly replied, yes. It was as if I had given up pretending to be obedient and sensible, given up saying those pleasant and touching words. Just at this moment, only at this moment. All right, I'll get back at them for you. Austen gently held me, his voice resonating with the tremor of his chest. I felt his warmth and slowly closed my eyes. The crimson glow of the sunset was gradually swallowed by the deep blue of the descending night. Austen's phone kept vibrating. It seemed to carry a hint of angry dissatisfaction. But he ignored it, holding my hand and leading me to the somewhat old apartment staircase. Lexi, I might not be able to come see you for a while. I need to take care of some things. Once they're settled, I'll come find you. Be good and wait for me, okay? The dim light flickered in his eyes. I showed my usual obedient smile, okay. I turned and stepped onto the stairs. I knew Austen was still watching me. Wait for him? No. Austen Howard, I won't wait for you. I looked at the twinkling stars in the sky and stepped up the stairs one by one. As the final bell for handing in the papers rang, this semester came to an end. I bought a ticket to City C, and only when I was packing did I realize that I didn't have much to take with me. The day before departure, I finally waited for my stepmother, who hadn't been home for several days. Seeing me come out of the room, my stepmother didn't even lift her eyelids while sitting on the sofa. I stood in front of her, blocking her view of the TV. Get out of the way. My stepmother frowned impatiently. I placed the bank card in my hand on the table. My stepmother finally looked at me. What do you mean by this? Asking for money? I don't have any. I smiled. This is for you, as a thank you for not abandoning me back then, for raising me and letting me go to school. During the time when we relied on each other. Although she often cursed when she saw me envy others' new clothes, she would use her meager salary to buy some for me. During the high school entrance exams, she would also, like other parents, make fish soup and chicken soup for me. Once in winter, when I was getting in 4 drip at the hospital, I still remember her warming the 4 tube for me. But people are complicated and always changing. I came back to my senses and continued. I have completed the transfer procedures, and I will move out soon. Our relationship ends here. Bam! The remote control was thrown hard, hitting my forehead. You just thought of leaving now. Giving me money, how much can you give me? 1 million. I lightly spat out a number. My stepmother's cursing words got stuck in her throat, and she stared at me with wide eyes. Where did you get so much money? After a while, my stepmother found her voice again. Austen gave it to me. Seeing my stepmother's confused look, I realized she didn't know about Austen. That time when my stepfather was beaten and hospitalized, he only lied to her, saying it was a vendetta from a rival. She didn't care about anything related to me. I sighed and said calmly, a man. Slap. A heavy slap landed on my face the moment I finished speaking. It hurt more than the time Hubert hit me. The pain twisted my heart. Lexi White, have you no shame? My stepmother screamed at me with a contorted face. As if she had seen something filthy. I lowered my head and laughed softly, the laughter growing louder, my shoulders trembling. In the end, I laughed so hard that I cried. Shame? What is that? Can it save my life? I looked up, meeting my stepmother's eyes. Shame? Can it stop my stepfather from harassing me, stop him from trying to open my door every night? Can it stop him from always trying to peek at me while I shower? Can it stop him from eyeing me with those disgusting looks? Can it stop him from having the chance to assault me? With each sentence, I forced my stepmother to sit down on the sofa. Looking down at the grayness on her face and her struggle, you are lying, he just wants to care for me? Just wants to get closer to me? Is that what you want to say? Do you really think that? If you really think that, why do you always refuse to come home? Is it because you can't face me? I sneered, as if to tear off all the disguises, revealing the terrifying white bones beneath. You are destroying yourself. You are degrading yourself. My stepmother shed tears, her voice hoarse. What do you mean by destroying? Being slapped and slandered at school, almost being raped at home, that's what destroying is. And this isn't degrading, I call it survival. Besides myself, no one will save me, right? I used my fingertips to brush aside the strands of hair on my stepmother's tear-streaked face, my tone carrying a mocking smile. If I don't seek the rope myself, I will be swallowed by this foul swamp. Then I will gradually rot away. But I am not willing. I promised Dad that I would live well. Since heaven doesn't give me a way to live, I will find one myself. I calmed my emotions and straightened my stepmother's somewhat messy collar. Take this money. If you can, divorce him. Move to another place and live well. Don't let him force you to drink with those leaders he wants to curry favor with. After saying this, I patted my sleeves and prepared to leave. Did he, that Austen, bully you? Do you like him? I didn't look back and just smiled while staring at the doorknob. He never bullied me. On the contrary, he treats me better than you all do. I remember once I fainted in front of Austen due to low blood sugar. And afterward, he had the housekeeper send me nourishing soups every day at school. Once, while watching a movie, I casually mentioned that the heroine's dress was beautiful. The next day, a more expensive and beautiful dress was delivered to me. Although he is not a good person, he's not someone I hate. Even though I don't hate him, I don't like him either. Love is not something I consider. I just want my plan to succeed. I need his money and his protection, but I don't need his love. After saying all of this, I pushed the door open as if relieved. Then, I bumped into a pair of familiar eyes. It was Austen, whom I hadn't seen for nearly 2 months. It felt as if the air was instantly sucked out. All that was left was a suffocating sense of anxiety. I blinked and gave a bleak smile. You heard everything? Austen pulled me up the steps to the spacious rooftop. He still didn't say a word, just silently approached me. He looked thinner, with bloodshot eyes, as if he hadn't rested well in a long time. Just as I was about to speak, he kissed me almost aggressively. Like a beast tearing into its prey. I tasted blood in my mouth. Just when I thought he was going to drag me down with him, Austen let go of me and lowered his head to my neck. So this is how you look at me when you're not pretending, he said hoarsely. I felt the tickling sensation from his hair against my neck and turned my head to create some distance. Why aren't you talking? Are you planning to leave after deceiving me? There was a hint of malice in Austen's words. I replied without hiding anything, yes, so are you planning to take revenge on me? I was calculating what to do if Austen really wanted to retaliate. Just as I was frantically thinking of a countermeasure, Austen chuckled softly and finally sighed. Do you have enough money? What? My mind seemed to stop working. Like a machine's gears getting stuck. Austen straightened up and cupped my face. Do you have enough money? Do you need me to transfer some more to you? No need, it's already enough. I came back to my senses and refused without thinking. I had sold all the things Austen gave me. Even after giving my stepmother $1 million, I still had plenty left. Is that so? Is it enough to keep you well-fed and well-housed? Austen Howard, let's end this here. I interrupted him, looking at him seriously. Austen fell silent, and then something on his wrist, which looked like a black electronic watch, started flashing. What's that? I stared at the flashing red dot. A monitoring locator given by my grandfather. His mouth curved slightly, with a hint of bitterness. As he spoke, the sound of sirens came from downstairs. Looking down from the rooftop, 3 black cars had stopped in the narrow alley without me noticing. Each car had 4 bodyguards in black suits standing outside. I made a deal with my grandfather to see you one last time. Time flies. Austen said this while lowering his head to kiss my lips, ignoring the people downstairs. Take good care of yourself, Lexi. Our accounts are not settled yet. After saying this, the bodyguards downstairs had already come up behind him. They took him away. The day after Austen left, I embarked on a new journey as well. I returned to the city of C where I grew up. I smoothly enrolled in a new school. I changed my phone number and deactivated all my previous accounts. My new desk mate was a very cute girl. With her company, I happily spent the last semester of my senior year. Our brief encounter faded into the sea of people as graduation approached. On the day I got into my dream university, I bought the flowers my dad used to buy for me every year on my birthday. I went to the cemetery. Holding a beer, I made a toasting gesture in the air. Dad, I got in. I kept my promise to you. I'm living well. Saying goodbye to everything in the past, I began to live a new life. I will live under the sun, showing a genuine and warm smile. After graduating from university, I applied for a graduate program abroad. During my 2 years studying abroad, I met many interesting and talented people. I also made warm and wonderful friends. On graduation day, my advisor asked if I wanted to stay and join the research institute there to continue my work on pharmaceuticals. I shook my head. I still planned to return home. A research institute in my country has already accepted my application. I kept learning, hoping to develop better treatments for cancer. This was the goal I set for myself on the day my dad passed away. After the graduation party, I waved goodbye to everyone, humming a song as I walked lightly to my apartment building. Then, I saw the man leaning against the car. After more than 6 years, his shoulders had broadened, and he had grown taller. His features were sharper, losing the boyish look and exuding an invisible sense of pressure. The cigarette in his hand glowed red, and through the smoke, he slowly looked at me. "Lexi, long time no see." It was Austen. Even though I had lost contact with him, I could always hear discussions about him. When I graduated from high school, I heard rumors about his engagement. During university, I heard he started working at Howard Corporation. After university, I heard he began to take full control of Howard Corporation. In my first year abroad, I heard he ousted many of the Howard Corporation's veterans. This year, I heard he canceled his engagement. News about him was everywhere, on phones, computers, newspapers. But now, that face was vividly in front of me. Looking at the man sitting on my sofa, I frowned. Just now, I almost ran to the door and opened it, but in the instant I was about to close it, Austen's hand slipped in, and then his whole body squeezed in. "As a guest, can I get a glass of water?" Austen leaned back on the sofa as if he were at home. "There's no water in my house. If you want to drink, go back to your own home." I sat on the sofa opposite him, staring at him. "Forget it, my home is too far." Austen placed his hand on his knee and smiled at my retort. "What do you want?" I wasn't in the mood for small talk and got straight to the point. His appearance inevitably brought back all the past memories. It felt like he was dragging me back to those unbearable times. Under the warm light of the room, Austen looked at me, his eyes seemingly filled with unresolvable sorrow. "Lexi, I'm now the head of Howard Corporation. I can make decisions about everything in the company. So, are you planning a belated revenge?" I stared at him, feeling invisible spikes all over my body. He lowered his eyes and was silent for a while before he spoke softly. "What I want to say is, you can continue to use me as a stepping stone, or a rope. I can give you more now." I threw the pillow in my hand at Austen's face. "I don't need it. What I need is for you to stop disturbing my life. Get out." He hugged the pillow and smiled. "You've got quite a temper." "That's good." Before I could explode, he spoke first. "I'll just stay for one night. I'll leave tomorrow." "Lexi, let me look at you a bit more. I can sleep on the sofa." Austen was bathed in the warm light, but his gaze at me was filled with sorrow. I turned my eyes away coldly. "If I say no, will you leave?" "No," he replied honestly. So, this question was completely meaningless. After washing up, I saw Austen using my projector to watch a movie. "Whose house is this, may I ask?" Seeing me arrive, he pulled me over. "Let's watch a movie before going to sleep." I tried to get up, but found that I couldn't shake off his hand. "If you don't watch the movie, then I'll keep holding your hand. Wherever you go, I'll go." I gave up struggling and sat down next to him. The changing lights from the movie cast our faces into shadows. "Austen," I called his name softly. "Hmm?" He looked at me against the light. "After today, can you stop coming to see me? I don't want to have any more contact with you. When I see you, I remember that time. I see myself like a dog without dignity. So, can you stop dragging me back into the past pain?" The pain in my eyes was reflected in his. It seemed to paint his eyes with pain too, otherwise why would I see his eyes turn red? The ending song of the movie slowly started playing, as if announcing that everything had reached its final chapter. Just when I thought this conversation would end without resolution, I heard his voice. "Sorry, I didn't know I would make you so miserable. I promise, I won't appear again." Then, he curved his lips into a smile, though his eyes were filled with bitterness. "Can I stay with you tonight, just sitting by your side? For the last time, let me look at you enough." My eyes stung with pain. I remained silent under his gaze. Austen really did as he said, sitting on the floor by the bed, arranging my blanket. "Do you need me to tell you a bedtime story?" He leaned against the edge of the bed, with a gentle smile. I shook my head under the blanket. All right, then good night. He turned off the light for me. Silence spread in the darkness. After a long time, so long that I had gradually fallen into a dream. In a daze, I felt my hand being gently held. Then I heard a somewhat indistinct voice. Lexi, did you miss me these years? Even for a second. These years, I haven't slept well. I have to fight with Grandpa, fight with those old guys in the company. Sometimes I feel so tired. I think it would be nice if you were here, but then I'm glad you're not. Those old guys won't bother you. Lexi, I've actually secretly watched you many times, watching you compete with your classmates. Watching you hold the trophy and give a speech, watching you hang out with friends, taking pictures. I'm very happy that you're doing well and taking good care of yourself. I used to think my Lexi was a delicate flower, now I know my Lexi is a strong, unyielding sapling. Lexi, I once said, we haven't settled our accounts. But today you looked at me with such sorrow, speaking of your pain, when just a moment ago at the ball, those eyes were still full of laughter. Lexi, smile more, I won't appear in front of you again. In the haze, I felt a warm touch on my forehead. And a drop of wetness. Is there a leak? Or is someone crying? I thought hazily, then sank into a deeper darkness. When I woke up, Austen was already gone. As if he had never been here. I was busy dealing with the matters of returning home, trying hard to push his figure out of my mind. The day before I checked out, I made a small cake specifically to give to the landlady. When I was looking for a place to live, I posted an ad, and she reached out to me. The house was very new, so new that it looked like no one had ever lived there. It was spacious, and I liked the overall layout. I swallowed and said I couldn't afford to rent it. But the price she offered was very cheap. So cheap that I thought there might be something wrong with the house. After she repeatedly assured me there was no problem, I compromised with the ridiculously low rent. She lived in the building next to mine. She often made food and brought it over to me, basically taking care of my dinners and late-night snacks. She was also very patient in showing me around, helping me quickly integrate into the local area. She mended the buttons on my clothes and taught me how to make interesting desserts. After a while, the two of us really felt like we were relying on each other in a foreign land. When the landlady opened the door, she was on the phone. Seeing me holding the cake, she froze. Then, I heard Austen's voice on the phone. Yes, you've done well these past 2 years. I'll give you another sum of money after she returns home. Then the call ended. I silently stared at the woman who had cared for me like a mother. She smiled awkwardly at me from the sofa in the living room. I was indeed sent by Mr. Howard. He found me before you came here. The Howard family has properties here, and I am the housekeeper for their properties. And the house you rented from me. I seemed to realize something and asked tentatively. That house was also bought by Mr. Howard before you came. He specifically chose one close to your school, with good decor and environment. The interior layout was also personally arranged by Mr. Howard, bit by bit. Every word she said made my heart skip a beat. All my thoughts gradually formed a line. No wonder I liked that house as soon as I saw it. Whether it was the decoration style, the sofa, bed, or appliances inside. They were all things I liked. The sofa? The bed? I remembered that I had once complained at Austen's house that his sofa was too soft, and the bed was too soft too. Uncomfortable, causing back pain. But the softness in that house was just right. I had also told him before that I liked warm-colored layouts because they felt very cozy. And that house was so cozy that once you went in, you didn't want to come out. Is there anything else? I looked at her, taking a deep breath. She rubbed her hands. Also, the meals I made for you were all designed by a nutritionist. The cakes I brought you on your birthdays these past 2 years were actually made by Mr. Howard himself. And I reported your meal conditions and late nights to him every day. Listening to her continuous words, I felt a surge of inexplicable emotions in my heart. Wave after wave, impossible to stop. After she finished speaking, she paused for a few seconds, then looked at me with a pleading gaze. You promised me to keep it a secret. Mr. Howard repeatedly warned me not to let you find out. You. I forced a stiff smile. Don't worry, I won't tell Austen. She breathed a sigh of relief, patting her chest. She sneaked a glance at the small cake on the table. I smiled and pushed the cake towards her. Just as I was about to leave, the woman called out to me, "Miss White, there's one more thing I think I should tell you. Mr. Howard actually comes here every month. After you go inside, he watches from a distance, stays for a night, and leaves the next day." I didn't respond to the woman's words, silently leaving. The moment I stepped out of the airport upon returning home, the familiar scent in the air wrapped around me. I quickly reported to the Medical and Pharmaceutical Research Center. I became a member of the research team. "Hey, did you know? The Howard Group seems to have invested a large sum of money in us as research funding." "Really?" "I overheard it. Isn't the boss of the Howard Group that Austen Howard?" "Yes, it's him." In the lab, everyone was whispering about the latest gossip they had heard. My hand paused while I was doing an experiment. Austen was indeed keeping his promise, not contacting me, and not appearing in front of me. Yet, I could still feel his presence. At night, when I pulled the curtains, I would habitually look downstairs. If I looked carefully, I could see a black car parked in a corner not far away. Recently, a whole row of breakfast and late-night snack shops opened downstairs from my house. The variety was plentiful, the nutrition balanced, and the prices incredibly cheap. And at the flower shop on the corner, every time I passed by, someone would cheerfully invite me to draw a lottery. I always drew the first prize and received different beautiful flowers for free every day. The broken streetlights at the entrance of my community, which had been out for a long time, were all repaired. I could easily guess whose doing this was. I let out a gentle sigh. "Lexi, what's wrong? Is there a problem with the data?" My colleague noticed and approached. "No, do you know this question is like a curse?" I looked at him faintly. He quickly spat 3 times in response, then said mysteriously, "Lexi, I've recently heard about a temple where wishes are very effective, and I don't tell just anyone. Aren't we supposed to believe in science?" I squinted at him. "When the data doesn't work, you can also believe in metaphysics." He had an experienced look on his face. "Thank you, but I haven't believed in deities since I was a child." I politely declined his good intentions. "Then what do you believe in?" "God?" I smiled at him and continued with my experiment. "I only believe in myself. From beginning to end. A rare day off." I bought fresh flowers to visit my parents. The gloomy rain made the cemetery appear even more solemn. I looked at my parents' photos and talked for a long time. As I was leaving, I ran into the cemetery's caretaker. I used to come every year, and I had greeted him a few times. He looked at me, then at the tombstone, and asked in confusion, "Why didn't that man come with you? In the past 2 years you didn't come, he came on your behalf, each time bringing flowers like these." Once, I asked him what his relationship with you was, and he said you were his beloved, studying abroad. My steps felt nailed to the ground, unable to move. At the same time, a message popped up on my phone. Austen Howard, the person in charge of the Howard Group, was in a car accident on the Riverside Bridge and is currently being rushed to the hospital. Car accident? Hospital? I stared at the screen, looking at the deformed car in the report and Austen covered in blood being carried into an ambulance. My chest felt as if a big hole had been torn open, with countless cold winds pouring in. The rain fell harder, and the thunder sounded like a sorrowful wail. The wet sleeves from the rain brought a chill. I had an illusion that the cold seemed to seep into my bones. For some reason, I thought of the day my dad passed away. It was as if I could hear that dreadful funeral bell again. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. I instinctively wanted to call Austen, only to realize I no longer had his contact information. I had no way to reach him. It seemed he was really going to disappear from my life completely, just as I had said. The Howard family blocked all news. No one knew what had happened to Austen. Some speculated he was dead, others guessed he was in a vegetative state. As time went on, the speculations grew more outrageous. Amid the increasingly absurd guesses, I finally met Cleve, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He stood at the entrance of the research institute, wearing a black trench coat. The once unruly face had now matured over time. "Shall we talk?" He smiled at me. I walked with him to a nearby coffee shop. He looked at me for a long time before speaking slowly. "Why have you lost so much weight?" I shifted my gaze from the coffee on the table to his face, just about to speak. He seemed to know what I wanted to ask and spoke first. "His condition is not good. He's still being rescued. At any moment." Cleve didn't finish his sentence, just looked at me quietly. My hand tightened around the corner of my clothes as his words sank in, my throat too dry to speak. Cleve took in my expression, as if pained. "I've been thinking abroad for the past few years. If I hadn't left because I was afraid of Grandpa's control, would I have met you first? Would you have been as good to me, and shown a sad expression when something happened to me?" I looked at him, about to deny it after a few seconds of silence. When Cleve shoved a piece of bread into my hand, "Don't say anything, I don't want to hear your answer." At the same time, Cleve's phone on the table lit up. I saw the wallpaper. It was the back of a girl in a school uniform with her hair tousled into a mess. It was the day Hubert came to find me. He must have taken it secretly after dealing with Hubert and messing up my hair as he led me out of school. Cleve noticed my gaze and turned off his phone. After learning about Austen's condition, I didn't want to stay any longer, glanced at the time, and stood up. "My lunch break is almost over, I need to go." "Lexi." Cleve turned his head and called out to me. Seeing me look over, he smiled against the light. "Actually, not choosing me was the right decision. I can't do what my brother did." "Do you know why Grandpa didn't come after you back then?" "Because my brother threatened him with his own life, saying that if he caused you any trouble, he would slit his own throat immediately. The Howard family wanted to make him an obedient dog, but in the end, they raised an ambitious wolf. In those 2 years you were abroad, he and Grandpa were in a power struggle. Grandpa secretly sent people to find you, but they were all stopped by his men. The day he successfully took over, he said to Grandpa and the company elders, if anyone dared to send people to find you, he would send them to their grave immediately. So, you not choosing me was the right decision." Before leaving, the last thing I heard was Cleve's sigh, both sad and smiling. After seeing Cleve, I returned to the lab. I continued my experiments in a daze. His words kept ringing in my ears. Everything about Austen played like a movie in my mind. My chest felt inexplicably heavy. I didn't know what went wrong. I only knew that something seemed to be missing, some places felt empty. After work, I stood at the entrance of the community. The breakfast shop and late-night snack shop were still open. Passing by the flower shop, the girl at the door still pulled me in for a lottery. It was still the first prize, still bright flowers. It seemed like nothing had changed. But one day I noticed, one of the repaired streetlights was broken again. The first day I came home, it was still broken. The second day I came home, it was still broken. The 10th day I came home, it was still broken. I stood there, lost, staring at the light. I suddenly realized it might never light up again. The person who fixed it was really gone. "Sis, why are you crying?" In a daze, my hand was gently pulled. I looked down, it was a little girl with pigtails. She handed me a slightly crumpled napkin. Was I crying? I touched my cheek and felt wetness. "Vicky, why are you running around?" The little girl's mother came over, glanced at me warily, and quickly pulled the girl away. The surroundings returned to silence. I slowly squatted down, unable to suppress my sobs. I didn't know why, but I felt that terrible sadness had engulfed me, as if I was the only person left in the world. No place to belong, no road ahead. You don't believe in deities because you have nothing to ask for. But how can a person go through life without having anything to ask for? My colleague said this to me after seeing my reaction at that time. Unexpectedly, his words became a prophecy. I stood in front of the main hall, looking at the Bodhisattva with lowered eyes, full of compassion and mercy. I watched the devout worshippers kneeling and muttering softly. I knelt down like them, with my hands clasped together. Incense smoke curled up, and the sea of people ebbed and flowed. After worshipping at each hall, I came to the place my colleague mentioned for making wishes. I heard that in this temple, you have to kneel and worship first. After that, you go to the wishing place to get a piece of red cloth, write your name and wish on it, and hang it on the tree. It's very effective. My colleague's mysterious and excited voice echoed in my mind. After receiving the red cloth, I held the pen but didn't write for a long time. A young monk with hands clasped together glanced at me and gave me a compassionate smile. I bowed my head in return and lowered my eyes to write my name and wish on the red cloth. When a person has something to ask for, they will feel a longing in their heart. After finishing the last stroke, I hung the red cloth on the tree. As the red cloth fluttered, the still wet writing was revealed, "I only wish for Austen Howard's safety and health." The breeze stirred, and the red cloths on the tree flew like flames. It was as if they were hearts carrying countless sincere wishes. I walked down the mountain, facing the wind. The sea of clouds was vast, like the boundless world. The Bodhisattva watched the coming and going of all beings with lowered eyes. I suddenly remembered what I said the first time I went to see my dad after transferring schools. "Dad, I lied to someone. He's not a good person, but he was the best person to me during that time." The sea of people ebbs and flows, and when I looked back, that person had already disappeared in the waves. I sighed and prepared to continue down the mountain. But when I looked up, I saw Austen standing on the steps not far away. He was smiling, looking at me from afar.